So, hello, welcome to something of an XFondo Fireside Chat, I would say. So, I'm joined with Corinne and Elliot, co-founders of the Ruckus racing team here in Vancouver, BC. Corinne, Elliot, it's a beautiful sunny day. It's Friday. How are you doing?
We are good. We've been out since 5:30 this morning for training. So we watched the sunrise, which was amazing. So I think we're having a pretty good Friday.
Get much better since starting the day like that with the team. So we're doing really well.
Nice. Yeah, I think it was something like -1 this morning. So
can attest, it was quite cold.
Yeah, you're harder than me. But so listen, I feel like in this cycling scene, both of you are starting to make a bit of a name for yourselves and becoming a bit familiarized, I suppose, with people around. But for those who don't know, Corinne, why don't you kick us off and tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got into the sport in the first place?
Yeah. So I'm originally from England and I did not cycle at all. And then when I moved to Vancouver, my boyfriend was going to this amazing place on his bike. And I was like, that's cool. I want to do that. So I just kind of started casually cycling and then realized I actually really enjoyed being outside and exploring new places and getting to see like incredible views. And I actually got into racing because I met all these girls at Paul Moffat's philosophy class, and the vibe was just so amazing. I still remember meeting Elliot for the first time, and I was like, this is cool. We could race together. And yeah, it kind of went from there. It just kind of snowballed into this thing, which is now Ruckus, which is really like we're super proud of it. So yeah, that's
nice. Nice. Elliot, tell us a bit about your side of things. How did you also get into this part of the two-wheeled adventure thing?
I would say it's similar to Corinne, and then also for the same reason, it was the impetus to start Ruckus. In many ways, for me, was COVID had begun, and my boyfriend at the time was also a cyclist. And I think that's a very common narrative when you talk to women who are in cycling, is that they watched curiously from the sidelines while the men in their lives rode bikes and participated and performed at higher levels and didn't know how to jump in themselves. It's not a sport that has a lot of representation for women. And so I thought that out really early when I bought a bike, was like really wanted to just meet other women who were at a similar level, had similar experiences that I did. There's something so intimate and personal around being able to ride with women. So very similar vein as Corinne, ended up in QOM and Paul Moffat's philosophy class, and like lightning struck, where I met 10 women who were all in the exact same place in their cycling journey, just starting, huge appetite for competition and performance and community. And it was like with all of that in mind that we started Ruckus, so that more women could bring women into cycling and racing. So less reliance, less waiting for a man to open the door, and more women to extend a hand and to create one space for their peers.
Amazing. Yeah, it sounds like that was a very foundational night.
Oh, yes.
We're talking, this is how many years ago now?
3 years ago. It was pouring rain. It was getting dark, and we were doing hill repeats down at UBC. And like I vividly remember every girl in that class, like so vividly. It was a very magical night, I have to say.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
amazing, and I feel most likely very needed sensation at that moment. You know, like this crystallization of something that was lacking, but then just coming into being. Why don't we talk about? I feel like you guys, especially, there's a mission here. There's values that you are aligned alongside. So what are they? What's the Ruckus mission?
I mean, I would say, like, to its core, the intention of Ruckus is to create more opportunities for women in racing. Like, super simply, that's what we're trying to do. And obviously there's so many different ways to do that. I feel quite strongly this year that it's centering around creating more opportunity. And opportunity looks like a lot of things. It could be financial. It could just be making sure that there are events and sessions and clinics available to women. Because, like, of course, a financial barrier is a barrier that exists for everyone in cycling. but so does access to clinics and events in a comfortable and safe space. So we're working really diligently to create more opportunities for women's only events, women's only clinics, to give a space that feels really comfortable for learning.
Amazing. Corinne, anything you to add?
Yeah, I feel like racing's always been about like winning, and like the team has to win. Whereas I feel like in Ruckus, it's like if you win, amazing. If you come last, amazing. Like if you just turned up and didn't finish the race, like we're so proud. And that's all we ask for, is that people just, they're fun, they're respectful, and that they just try. So it's about like racing's like what your potential is, not necessarily what your teammates are. So yes, I think like it can be daunting joining a race team, being like, I have to win to be on this team. But that's not the case at all. So it's nice.
Not at all. I feel as if that's definitely the first thing that comes into your mind when you think about racing. But I want to pick up on a word that you just said, which really resonated with me. And that's the word fun. You know, I think as adults, you know, sometimes we forget a little bit about fun, and we're great at it as kids. But one thing that I think is definitely fun is the gravel side, because that's something that Ruckus is very focused on compared to road at times. So in terms of gravel, where does the fun come for you? Where's the joy in that?
For me, the fun is it's kind of silly. Mm-hmm. I feel like with gravel racing, people take themselves a little bit less seriously, maybe. And there's a lot more yeehawing and helping people out, and it's very sociable. I find like before and after the race. Like I personally find our racing fun because it's so varied. Like you're going down Forest Service road, you're going through mountain bike trails, you're going past lakes. It is so fun. You get to go to these amazing places that you might not go to ever on a road bike or whatever. Yeah, I love it. It's so fun.
And I think for me, it kind of like there's two pieces to it. So one, I feel like a lot of people feel this way, is that like when you're riding on gravel, you're training even before racing, like you can relax more. Mm-hmm. You know, there's less anxiety around sharing the road. You obviously you still have to be very aware of where you're riding and everyone else you're sharing the space with, but you're not sharing space with cars. And that takes off a lot of pressure that you don't actually realize is there all the time. Like you're always, I feel like you're defensive. Whereas when you're in gravel, I feel like that's where I can unwind a little bit. So that feels very nice. And to be able to still get training benefits and to like be social, it just feels like a no-brainer. Mm-hmm. And then I think what I love so much about gravel is that I can feel proud of myself every time I ride. And not that I don't with road, but with gravel riding and with riding on more technical features, like you can challenge yourself in such small incremental ways through the whole ride. So you're like, oh, I would never have gone through that bike gate. Last week, I would never give you a try. I would have unclipped, but I did it this week. And like everyone's excited for you when you do it. Or, like, I would have never done that feature or that corner. I really railed that one corner. I'm so happy about that. So I just feel like there's a lot of small celebrations through gravel riding. And I just think it has something to do with the gravel culture as well. Like everyone feels that way. And so they like carry it with them. And it's different than road riding. Road riding obviously loves for different reasons, but gravel feels like very uniquely fun and free. Yeah.
Elliot, I'd love to extend on that a little bit. You mentioned the collective celebration you have, the community. And, you know, we live in a beautiful part of the world. So tell me a little bit about how you see it, how the gravel scene here feels to you. If you imagine you were describing to someone who's like, wait a minute, there's a gravel community? What is that? What does that mean? What is that to you?
Oh, I mean, the first word that comes to mind is like, it's a delight. Like there's like an ease to it that I think is so special. Like there's amazing trails that are very close to where all of us live. And so like for example, like I live in Kits, I can get to Stanley Park in 6.5 minutes. And then I can just tuck in, you know, an hour in the trees after work. But I think beyond that, there's a culture of just like really lovely community. The people who are a part of the gravel scene are very supportive. It's really like anchored in making everyone feel comfortable and pushing themselves. but in a safe space. Like when we all go out, there's like 6 or 7 of us. We love to go out riding at night, and we're all wearing our headlamps, and we feel like we're such like a group, and everyone's like cheering and hollering in the forest and like calling out obstacles and stuff. But it just feels like such a shared activity. Whereas sometimes while road riding and racing obviously is quite, it is still a team sport. It can feel very like isolated and you're on your own. And you're like have to go into your own pain cave. Whereas it does feel like with gravel, you get to like, you're sharing that a lot more.
That's word delightful. I love that. I wonder really what adjective pops into your mind to that degree?
Ooh. I just want to say adventure. Like, I feel like every time I go on my gravel bike, even if I'm doing the same route or the same area, there's always like someone's got a new trail that they found, or someone's going to do the route that you usually do, but in reverse, and it feels so different. Like, I always, like, even if you're just going to Stanley Park, it can feel like an adventure. Or you can go up onto the North Shore and go on these incredible trails that I didn't even know existed.
Or you're like doing the exact same route you always do, but with a new friend. Yeah. And then they take a line that you would never take on the exact same path, and you're like, what are you doing over there? But then you're like, that's fun. But then you just do that.
Or like you like ride with different groups. Like I went on a group ride, and it was way faster. And I was like, this is a completely different sort of adventure than what I'm used to. So it's like so varied in that sense.
Yeah, adventure and delight. I mean, sign me up. Like, it's great. I listen to both of you speak, and your faces light up. You talk about when we talk about things we love, it's hard not to be that broadcast of light that really, I don't know, it's very magnetic, I find. But that I think can also negate, maybe it's easy to forget that it's not necessarily maybe as easy for other people to get into these things as, when you're comfortable or you have experience or whatever it may be. I'm curious to ask you, what are some of the challenges you've noticed because I'm sure a lot of people would love to be like, oh yeah, that sounds great. Wait, like there's a stop. So what are some of those challenges that you see in stopping people getting into gravel cycling?
I think part of it is like, okay, so now I need a new gravel bike, and I need new gravel shoes, and I need lights, and I need different clothes. So I feel like a financials aspect that we've already touched on, that's definitely a huge barrier. But I think it's also just like the uncertainty. Like, it can be scary. Like, there's some trails that I go down and I'm like, I don't know if I can do this. But I think it's like, if you can find a group of people, they're going to help you get these things. Or just like learn from. I think that would definitely help people overcome those challenges of not wanting to get into it. Because once you can do it, it's fun and it's cool. But though I've walked down many trails, I've walked up many trails, and just eventually like learn over time that you can do it.
Yeah, I can absolutely relate to that. And I think that I say that as something that's, challenges can be universal. But I think that one thing that Ruckus is really focusing on in a way that is super powerful, personally to me, to witness, is the way that you're advocating for the female and women's challenges specifically within cycling. And that's not something that cycling it's not a new problem within cycling, right? We know that it's a traditionally heavily male-dominated sport. But in terms of gravel cycling, are there unique challenges, Elliot, that you've noticed for women to get into?
I think like what keeps running in my mind, and this is something that I just like as we continue to build, becomes more clear, is just women in most aspects of their life lack a sense of entitlement. And you see that with women and the wage gap, and women not applying for jobs that they're qualified for because they lack a sense of entitlement and confidence in themselves to put themselves out there into stretch situations, into roles or opportunities that they might not be fully comfortable with. And so for me, what I think is so important with any event, but with gravel, it's about building confidence. It's about developing representation in the community so that you can see yourself reflected in a group, and you, as a result, feel like you can do what they're doing. And obviously that there are like women who aren't relatable just because their performance is incredible and it's so challenging to see yourself in that way. which is why I'm so proud of what Ruckus has created, is because it really is just about showing up for you. And so some of our racers have performance goals, and it's incredible. And some of our racers, their performance goals are showing up and completing the race. And those are held with equal value. But I do think it is around building a sense of entitlement that women can occupy the space, have a right to occupy the space as much as anyone else. And that comes with confidence, that comes with representation, accessibility, community. So I think we have to chip away at it. We just got to keep showing up.
Yeah, it's making some noise. Right. It's going to be, I think it's like a snowball effect of like when women see that we're doing this and we're just like your average woman in Vancouver running travel bike, like they're like, oh, then I can do that. Yeah. But I hope someone can see us and think, okay, if they can do it, I can do it.
And I also think like, it's not that hard. Like, of course, as in like riding is not that hard. But when all you see are examples and representations of people doing it in a really hard way, that's what you think it is. Like when I first started racing, I got a really expensive bike and I got really aero kit and I got really stiff carbon shoes and I had like the stiffest gravel shoes. And why? Because you can't walk in them, but that was like the representation I had. But in reality, you can gravel ride if you have a bike. And you could just poke around Pacific Spirit on the main trails on the gravel and get a taste for it to see if you like it. You don't have to hit any like technical trails to begin with. You can just go and do it. But I think that we build it up to be this like big experience when in reality you need a bike and you need a helmet. And that's where you can start. Like it doesn't have to be so deep as well. And I think that's what we're trying to show is like, you don't have to have the hottest kit. It's fun, but like you don't have to have the hottest kit. You don't have to have like the hottest bike. You just need a bike and a helmet to just give it a crack, kind of thing.
Yeah, I mean the Ruckus kit is pretty rad. So start that. It makes me think of another sport that I love. So I also love to run, and especially when I was a little younger. It was all about speed and trying to get faster. You know, people would ask me times, and there was almost like a sense of, wait a minute, I've got to show up with an answer here. You know? Mm-hmm. And more recently, I found myself going out, and even say if I'm doing a 5K, I'll leave the watch behind, and those are my favorite runs where I'm really just experiencing fresh air, and that's where I feel like a winner. Let alone like what the time is, and that's almost like a bonus. Corinne, I'm interested. You know, imagine someone came to you and was like, "Look, this sounds great, but I don't know. I don't feel comfortable. I'm not sure this is for me." Like, what would you say? Like, can you understand that sort of trepidation?
Oh, I mean, I started road racing and I found it extremely scary. Like, I personally just find it scary being close to each other's wheels. I didn't like that. The speed sometimes was just too much for me to handle. I'm not a fast girl. I like to go my own speed. But if you get dropped in a road race, you're out. You're gone. Like, good luck catching up. I've tried. It doesn't work. But I feel like in gravel, it's slower to start with, just because of the way that it works, like the resistance, the science behind it. It gets more strung out. So you're not in these big groups moving around these tight corners, especially a single track. It's very spread out. Everyone is so respectful. They give each other their spaces. You know, even at XFondo at one point, I was at the front of this train of about 20 men. But they were all like, "You're doing great. This is a great pace." And I was like, so I think like it's what we see in road racing. We see a lot of it like on television, like Tour de France is one of the biggest sporting events in the world. They go so fast. They're all cycling so close together, but gravel couldn't be more different than that. So as someone who's like could be interested in racing, but they don't feel comfortable, I feel like gravel's a great option. And the other point is that if you're not on a team, it doesn't really matter because it's not about strategy. Sure, I'm sure in the professional world they use strategy and what have you, but at our level, like you can race on your own, not have a team around you, and still do really well.
Down for coffee a few months ago one of the things that really stuck out to my mind was you said, like, look, racing's all about winning. And it drew such a chord in my mind because oftentimes that is what people think racing is. Do you think that this is something that people are, just not hearing ever? Is this a message that like Ruckus is alone in saying, or do you find that there's other voices out there trying to spread this message?
I mean, it's not a narrative that you hear very often, especially with race teams. And I think that's just given the context of road racing. I think that the narrative is changing with gravel racing and with more inclusion and with more diversity in the racing scene just generally. I think that we're seeing so many more perspectives coming to light, so many more positions and opinions and feelings about racing, and understanding the benefit of performance and participation for the sake of just those things. Like, my performance and participation is going to be different than somebody else's, but they're equal value. And I'm sure that there are some people who would argue that that's not the case. And that's not what we say. Like, for us, it's like we're all showing up, we're all prepping in the exact same way. Some of us just have different goals. So I think that it's changing. I think it's less common in the road scene for sure. And it's much more prevalent within gravel racing.
Yeah, I will say like racing is about winning, essentially. I think it's like it's okay to attempt to race knowing that you're not going to win it. And like, just because you don't think you're going to win doesn't mean that you shouldn't show up. If you don't show up, then who's the winner going to be? So it's like, well, you can show up for yourself. You don't have to win the race. You can win other things.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm really interested. So, like, we talk about this in sort of a general sense again, but for women, like, how do you feel? Like, what would you feel needs to be? What's working right now in terms of conversation and change and dialogue? What's not working? What needs to be? What would you like to be see coming down the pipe or happening now that's maybe not been happening in the past?
There's a few things. Like when I think about the big races, the media coverage is mainly men, maybe because there's more of them, which is fine sometimes. But I think like the media coverage is male dominated. Like there's some races where they don't even show the women's race. So that's definitely more like bigger picture stuff. So I think like going back to the snowball effect, like if you see other women doing it, then maybe more women will be inspired to do that. There's not always just like equal opportunities. Like this is maybe more prevalent in road racing. I feel like gravel plays a part, like start time. Women and men starting together. Should they start separately? Like giving the women their equal opportunity to have their own race and not always be with the men. So I know when I've started at gravel races, there's been about 10, for instance, women, and I'm looking around the start line thinking, where's the other girls? There's no one here. And then I just end up racing men. It's like, well, what if we've had all the women together and they had their own start? Would that be a different experience?
And I mean, what I'm seeing, and I'm more involved with like logistics and just with road racing, but it, like, just give a woman a seat at the table when you're making these decisions about events. Like when you're trying to decide start times, or when you're considering how to just generally improve participation from women in racing and in cycling events more generally. Like so often I see that the decisions are being made without any consultation from a woman. So like you have these men sitting around a table saying, what can we do to improve participation for women, without realizing that they're not actually soliciting advice from the exact group trying courage to come out, which is like the crux of the problem, in my opinion. It's like, if you wouldn't do it for a men's race, don't do it for a women's race, but we don't see that.
Yeah. There's definitely been a few, like I can think of a few races where women have been given their own start time, their own race, and the turnout is huge, like 10 times bigger than other races. It's like, it just goes to show that if they have equal opportunities, more women will come out to race.
And I also think, and I do feel quite strongly about this, having been pressured personally to continue showing up like race after race after race, because there's not that many women, so you have to keep showing up to make sure, because you have a women's only time, they're not going to take it away next year because there's not enough women showing up to every single race, to like tone it down. You know, like you need to make a commitment. If your commitment truly is around expanding the opportunities and increasing the number of women coming out to races consistently, you just have to leave that space available for women to be autonomous and independent and make a decision on what races they want to go to, and not threaten the removal of their start times, of their individual start times, because there weren't enough of them. Because we're trying. It's just not going to happen overnight.
Yeah, to me, it almost gets that feeling like there's like a business decision being made as opposed to sort of what is the right thing to do? What do we want to be doing? Elliot, I remember listening to when you sat down on the Platform podcast.
Mm-hmm.
Told a great story of just the numbers at play in men's and women's fields and the dynamics that actually places on organizers.
Mm-hmm.
Why don't you tell us that number? Because it really blew my mind when I sort of understood.
I use those numbers to be illustrative, but like, I mean, I'm sure if we got them from Cycling BC, they would reflect what is actually happening. But if you imagine there's like, let's say there's within road racing, because gravel is different, but my experience is more with road. But if you imagine that in an entire season, there's 100 women racers and 1,000 men racers, because that's probably what the distinction is. The expectation is that's like 100 men and 100 women show up to every single race. And so that means every single woman is expected to show up every single race to justify their place. Whereas the 10% of men get to show up and lovingly choose the races that they want to do, you know, balance their lives with other things they have going on, be thoughtful how they spend their money. But for women, it's like, you better show up, because if all of you don't, then we're not going to save your spot. And that narrative, like something about that happened a few times last year that really flipped the switch for me, in like realizing we have to change the way we're holding space for women and not making it so conditional, because it's systemic, the reasons why women aren't hoeing the start line. And again, I know, I can imagine organizing a race is not simple. Like, I'm not trying to take away from that at all. The small glimpses I'd had into permits, volunteers, road closures, police involvement, first aid, etc. Like, it's incredible, and we're so grateful to the community, to the members who do volunteer their time in many cases to create them. But it has been my observation.
You know, I think sometimes these harsh truths, the things we don't want to listen to and hear, but they need to be out there. It's and then you can do something about it. You know, like find those 900 people that are not currently there. You know, and I think both of you are doing phenomenal work in being almost some people that other women can look up to and say, "Hang on a minute, I understand this. This makes sense to me." And in a small way, we just chip away at inspiring people and bringing new people into the sport, because ultimately, and I think you were saying this before, Elliot, like when you're out on the trail, it's those people around you that matters. If you're doing it on your own, then kind of what's the point? I would love to hear, Corinne, I'll start with you. Tell me about some sort of inspirational women that you know that you've met in the scene.
So I already asked this person if I can share this story. So we've got the AOK. But we have a girl on our team called Soph, who I just find incredibly inspirational. I've just never met anyone who pours like so much energy and effort into their training and their racing. And she turns up to these races knowing that she's probably not going to win them, but she turns up with 110% effort every time, and she pushes herself to like her limit. And the story is that last year she raced, and this guy was stuck with a flat. So she helped him. She showed him how to change a tire and use the pump and everything. And then a marshal came up behind her and was like, "You're in last place." And she was like, "Well, I don't care I'm in last place. I'm going to hustle, knowing I'm not going to win." And she didn't come in last place, and she did really well. And I just think like that's so inspiring that like she gave herself her own goal it got a little spicy. But she came over the line and was just like thrilled with herself. And yeah, I find her so inspirational to get me sick.
That's awesome. How about you, Elliot?
I mean, it's a really good question because there's so many women, like genuinely women, especially in this scene, are just so incredible. I mean, I would have to say, like, I wouldn't be where I am today from a performance or community perspective without like the mentorship and guidance of Jen, who started Crit Nasty, which is like, I probably arguably Vancouver's first women's only crit racing team. But they do road races, they do everything. Jen has been racing since like the very beginning of the Tuesday night crit races started in like early 2000s, like 2006 or something. And she has just been such like a staunch, consistent advocate of women's racing. And she is always the person to like open up her arms and invite someone else on a ride. She doesn't even blink when you bring along someone. They Crit Nasty does Wednesday night sprint laps in Stanley Park. And it's like an open invite to all women. And so when I first got my bike, I still race on a Cervelo Aspero, which was like a gravel bike. And for a very long time, also raced on gravel wheels. So I didn't know any better. And like, she saw me out riding, and she ended up inviting me on these Wednesday night sprint laps. And I learned everything from her every week in those laps, and she owed me nothing. But she's just really incredible, and she has like guided a lot of women through their journey with cycling. And we need more people like that who just do it because they love the sport. And that's Jen.
I love that. I love also, you described being a Stanley Park knowing nothing, and yet you're not getting shade from that. You're actually getting invited on. You're being welcomed.
Mm-hmm.
Tell me, maybe people who are sort of getting into the sport or thinking about it, like, what's some of the things that you've learned now that you wish you knew back then?
So many.
I mean, for me, I think it's like, don't take yourself so seriously. And I know that's like so easy to say. And some people are more victim to it than others, and like have more in their heads. And that's like, I was definitely that way. Like, I thought I had to show up in a specific way, have a specific bike, know everything in order to be taken seriously. And like, I think that again goes back to the like having a sense of entitlement to be in a specific space. Is like when I like puff up my chest and put my shoulders out and like demand I be taken seriously. When like in reality, it's like, it doesn't have to be that big a deal, and you can just start anywhere. So I just wish I had gotten into it earlier and not felt so much pressure to get it right as soon as I bought a bike and as soon as I got out, that like these slow incremental changes and learnings and lessons and people that you meet will all contribute to who you are becoming on the bike and in the community, versus feeling pressure to show up really tight in this specific way.
Yeah, and I think for myself, like, you can race what you want to race. You don't have to go do crits because you joined a crit, like, well, maybe not a crit team, but you joined a crit team, you're probably going to do crits. But like with that, when we first started our team, it was a very big focus on road and crit. And then it wasn't until I did a gravel race, I was like, actually, this is what I really enjoy. And this is where I thrive. I'm a different person at gravel races. Ride races, I'm a nervous wreck. But I will put myself down a boulder field. So it's like finding what you enjoy. Because like, if you don't enjoy it, then like, you're not going to train for it. You're not going to want to do it. You're not going to put yourself out there. So I think it's like finding what gets you going.
You got to follow your joys and passions, right? I think that's ultimately when we're aligned in that in life. It's that beautiful feeling and state flow. Yeah, it's magnetic almost. You find your tribe. Man, we're pretty powerful as a collective, I find. Mm-hmm. This has been such a privilege and a pleasure to sit down with you both. For those who want to know more about Ruckus, where do they go? How do they find you?
We're on Instagram, baby. And that's it. So yeah, Ruckus Racing, we're on Instagram. we put out some fun reels and content and things. And we will be hosting lots of events through the season. And we have been really lovingly sponsored this year by InstaFund. And our clinics have been sponsored by Place Architect. So we do have a lot of really fun stuff cooking up and in store for everyone, for the women. So check it out.
Yeah, and I think it's a good place if you're new to racing or if you're an experienced racer, like we want to hear from everyone. So.
Yeah, absolutely. I highly recommend checking out the Ruckus Instagram page, especially. There's some fantastic content on there, some great stories, and we're actually super excited to be working closely with you this year to share more stories and just help more people and more women get into the sport of gravel cycling, which is a win for us all.
I want to see more women on the start line, so I'm not in a field of men, please. My one request.
Yeah, I feel like that's a clear direction. We can follow that. Let's do it.
Fantastic.
In the meantime, any communities anyone should know, any shout outs, anything, any final words, Corinne?
I will say Paul from Velocity. If you want to even riding a bike and you want to kind of get out and meet some more women, he runs these Queen of the Mountain classes in spring and summer. That's where we met. Maybe you'll have a lightning moment and another team will evolve. And Paul's just always been a great advocate for us. Like from day one, like when Elliot had this idea, he's been a huge supporter. So definitely check Paul at Velocity out.
Paul's a rap guy, and he's pretty fast as well. So let's slow him down somehow.
Yeah. I mean, on my end, I've mentioned it. Crit Nasty, incredible. Lots of women's focused rides. I will say, and we haven't spoken about this, but a good friend of ours and also an avid gravel rider racer is Andrea Barber of A Few Fun Moves. She puts out incredibly relatable content around training and cycling and just like really healthy perspective on all of it. And she's been really like, I think, formative for me in the way that I view exercise. So I love everything she does. Go check her out. Yeah.
Beautiful. Okay. Well, like I said, it's Friday, so that means in my mind that we got to be out there doing some stuff. So, again, Corinne and Elliot, thank you so much. And also, hat off to what you're doing in the community. I want to see more of it. And from us as an event producer as well, we're here to support this sort of stuff. So carry on the good work, and we'll be riding with you soon.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thanks, Ollie.